number 37, which is basically from wind energy and wind turbine, right? So if we see that there is a special mechanism which is called as yaw control mechanism, right? What is the use? The yaw control use in wind turbine generator is so if I tell you to be very frank, the function of this yaw control is basically the mechanism. It is basically the mechanism to keep the rotator axis along the wind direction, कि उसी डायरेक्शन में रहे जिस डायरेक्शन में मेरी विंड है. इसका एक्चुअली फंक्शन तो यही होता है, ठीक है. The mechanism to keep the rotor axis along with the wind direction. So this is the main function, but we will see the details that on what basis we are saying that the mechanism to keep the rotor axis along the wind direction. This is the main mechanism, right? ठीक है. So the mechanism to keep the rotor axis along with the wind direction, right? So we will see that how it is possible, right? So now we will see the detailings. The correct answer is basically yaw control mechanism is a mechanism to keep the rotor axis along the wind direction, कि उसी direction में रहे rotor का मेरा axis जिस direction में से wind आ रही है, right? So now let's see the detailings of this. तो ये तो सबको पता है आपको that how wind energy works. A wind turbine is a revolving machine that convert kinetic energy from wind into mechanical energy, and this mechanical energy is then being converted into electricity that is sent to power grid. The turbine component responsible for these energy conversion are the rotor and the generator. ये इसके मेन आपके कंपोनेंट है. मैं डायरेक्टली आपके याw कंट्रोल मैकेनिज्म पे आऊंगा. यहाँ पे मैं ज्यादा टाइम वेस्ट नहीं करूंगा, ठीक है. देखिए कंट्रोल मेथड जो दिए हुए हैं आपके यहाँ पे मेन चीज है, ठीक है. ये याw एडजस्टमेंट दी हुई है ना, ये आपकी मेन चीज है जो हमें कवर करनी है. कंट्रोल मेथड्स, you can use different control method to either optimize or limit power output, and you can control a turbine by controlling the generator shape, blade angle adjustment and rotation of the entire wind turbine. तीन मेथड से हम कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं. The blade angle adjusts the turbine rotation, also known as pitch and yaw control. A visual representation of the pitch and yaw adjustment is shown. तो यहाँ पे आप देख सकते हैं जो फिगर आपकी 6 है, ये वाली yaw adjustment. If I am not wrong, then you can see here that how this is controlling the yaw adjustment, how it is controlling. So you can see it is keeping the axis in the same direction where the wind is, right? That is the main funda for this. And in the other you can see it is revolving around different thing, but here it keeps, if you see across the line, the mechanism to keep the rotor axis along the wind direction. तो rotor axis को उसी direction में रखेगा जो wind की direction होगी, right? तो आपका मैकेनिज्म उस तरह से चलेगा, ये ध्यान रखिएगा. ये बेसिकली याw कंट्रोल मैकेनिज्म का होता है. मैं आपको दिखा देता हूं फिर भी कहां है. देखिए ये रहा. If you read these things, so yaw refer to the rotation of entire wind turbine with the horizontal axis. Yaw control basically ensure that the turbine is constantly facing into the wind to maximize the effective rotor area, as a result power. तो maximum power के लिए basically उस direction में रहता है, because wind direction can very quickly the turbine may misalign with the oncoming wind and cause power output losses. You can approximate these losses with the following equation. तो losses के बारे में बात की गई है, but main function जो है yaw control mechanism का वो ये है that this mechanism is to keep the rotor axis along the wind direction so that we can take out the maximum power in the form of output. Is it clear to everyone? Anyone having any doubt till here? जल्दी बताइए फटाफट भैया. किसी को कोई डाउट है यहाँ पे? Anyone having any doubt till here? चलो, let's go ahead. Now we will moving to next question. हाँ, तो ये आपको चीजें देखनी है कि क्या चीज पे मुझे एम्फोसिस करना है, व्हाट आर द थिंग्स वेयर आई हैव टू एम्फोसाइज। यहाँ पे आपका सेकंड इज द करेक्ट आंसर एज पर द गिवन ऑप्शन। सो it is basically the mechanism to keep the rotor axis along the wind direction. Now let's move to the next question, which is question number 38. And do use these solutions very carefully. Even if you correct the question, then also read the details, because it will enlighten your brain up to a larger extent, right? Our team make them precisely for the purpose, like if the teacher have something else in the mind in the next attempt or the next exam, what he could ask, right? Because if you see the pattern near and there's a question. Question number 38, it has been repeated n number of times. It is a repeated question directly from the copy. It is from EIA, right? और वो भी EIA में भी जो आपका है ये 2006 वाले ड्राफ्ट से ही आया है, 2020 से कुछ नहीं आया है इसमें, ठीक है। What is the maximum period of valid for granting environmental clearance for mining project? So let me tell you very few things which have been mentioned in our notes also. If you ask me, mining project 30 years without any doubt as per the 2006 draft. जो भी मैं यहाँ पे डाटा दे रहा हूँ 2006 ड्राफ्ट के हिसाब से, क्योंकि ये क्वेश्चन 2006 EIA ड्राफ्ट के बेसिस पे है। देन आपका रिवर वैली प्रोजेक्ट जो है, रिवर वैली प्रोजेक्ट 10 इयर्स, और हाइड्रो पावर भी जिसको आप बोलते हो। देन अदर डेवलपमेंटल प्रोजेक्ट्स 5 ईयर, other developmental projects 5 year. So these are the specification. Here they have asked about mining. So mining is clearly, no doubt, without any doubt, it is 30 year is the correct answer. 30 year is the correct answer without any doubt. Anyone having any doubt in this? Mining यहाँ पे पूछा है, तो mining would be definitely going to be 30 years validity. Anyone having any doubt till here? We have brief about everything in this also. Like we have mentioned how many categories and how many drafts are there, right? 30 years it have been mentioned like here. So under the EIA notification 2006, that requires the prior environmental clearance for certain category project. The clearance for mining project remain valid up to period of 30 years, right? So river valley or hydropower project 10 years, ठीक है, as per the 2006 draft mentioned है। चलिए आगे आ जाइए, अगले क्वेश्चन पे आ जाते हैं, क्वेश्चन नंबर 39। ये रॉक और मिनरल से क्वेश्चन है, अच्छा क्वेश्चन है, आपको ये पढ़ाई भी गई है सारी चीजें। लेट्स सी व्हाट द क्वेश्चन सेज। मैंने टेस्ट में डिस्कस किया था विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग सिलिकेट क्ले मिनरल। तो हमने जब डिवीजन किया था वहां पे दो तरह के मिनरल थे आपके, सिलिकेट एंड नॉन सिलिकेट। एंड बेसिकली सिलिकेट्स में सारे आपके आते थे, जैसे कि फेल्सपार, क्वार्ट्ज, ओलिवीन, पायरोक्सिन, एम्फीबोल, माइका, these were there. And then we have non-silicates also, right? But यहाँ पे आपसे क्या पूछता है, which of the following silicate clay mineral, means आपके जो मेजर emphasis है वो silicates पे ही होनी है इसमें, that you have to keep in mind. जो मेजर emphasis है मेरी, ठीक है, सिलिकेट मिनरल्स के ऊपर ही होनी है। सिलिकेट वो भी क्ले मिनरल्स। So if you ask me, the silicate clay mineral which is having highest interlayer expansion, because when you see the geometry, these silicate minerals have different sort of geometry. Let us suppose you might have studied in solid state. Someone is simple cubic, someone is body centered, someone is rhombohedral, someone is monoclinic, etc., etc. So here the correct answer is Montmorillonite, which is the option number 1, Montmorillonite. It is having the highest interlayer expansion. I will show you how come. So the correct answer is Montmorillonite, which is a silicate clay mineral and show highest interlayer expansion, right? Montmorillonite shows highest interlayer expansion, right? So this is the mineral Mont Morillonite, right, which exhibits highest interlayer expansion. Okay, now we'll see how come it is showing highest interlayer expansion. So basically we have given the detailing here that like clay mineral refers to a group of hydroaluminosilicates that predominates in clay size less than 2 mm fraction of soil. तो ये तो आपको पता ही है detailings, इसमें कुछ इतना ज्यादा नहीं है. But the other thing, yes, here they have given the detail like layer type, how we have the ratio, right? And then yeah, you can see here that this expansion thing, if you see that what is the size and what is the all thing. So you can see here the dark dot represent the silicate, the O dark is representing oxygen, the arrow one is representing hydroxyl ion. Here we have been given like oxygen is represented by this, silicon by dark dot, right, hashtag by cation, and etc. Like these have been mentioned. So if you see the interlayer expansion between these mineral, right, and all like this is dicotrahedral, the geometry is मोन्टोमिरोनाइट डाइकोट्राहेड्रल, राइट. ठीक है, डाई ऑक्टाहेड्रल भी बोल सकते हैं इसको बिकॉज दो ऑक्टाहेड्रल बन रहे हैं. ऑक्टाहेड्रल ज्योमेट्री अगर आपको पता हो तो वी यूज्ड टू बी लाइक दिस. ऑक्टाहेड्रल ज्योमेट्री ऑलमोस्ट सभी लोगों को पता होगी. एवरीवन हैव स्टडीड दिस इन देयर 11th एंड 12th क्लास. तो इस तरह के ऑक्टाहेड्रल ज्योमेट्री आपकी बन जाती है. ठीक है, ठीक है ना. ऑक्टाहेड्रल ज्योमेट्री यहाँ से ज्वाइन रहेगा. ठीक है, तो ऑक्टाहेड्रल ज्योमेट्री आपकी बन गई है. ऑक्टाहेड्रल ज्योमेट्री जब आपने बनाई, ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे आप देख सकते हैं इस तरह के दो बने हुए हैं. तो दैट्स व्हाई वी सेड डाई ऑक्टाहेड्रल. और एक्सपेंशन की अगर बात करें तो इंटरलेयर एक्सपेंशन जो आप देखेंगे यहाँ पे मेंशन है 1 to 2 नैनोमीटर इन दिस केस. वर्मिकुलाइट जो कि क्ले का मिनरल है, इसमें ट्राई ऑक्टाहेड्रल है, इसमें 3 ऑक्टाहेड्रल लेयर होती है. ठीक है, और यहाँ पे भी जो है 1 to 1.5 के आसपास है जो इंटरलेयर एक्सपेंशन है. तो सेकंड नंबर पे ये आ जाएगा. और थर्ड नंबर पे आपका क्लोराइट आ जाएगा जो भी की ट्राई ऑक्टाहेड्रल ज्योमेट्री है और 1.5 1.4 नैनोमीटर इफ आई एम नॉट रॉन्ग. तो अगर मैं ऑर्डर करूं सबसे ज्यादा इसके अंदर नंबर 2 पे वर्मिकुलाइट और नंबर 3 पे क्लोराइट. ये इंटरलेयर एक्सपेंशन का आपका डाटा है एज पर द क्ले मिनरल्स, राइट. तो यहाँ पे मेंशन भी किया गया कि 1 to 2 नैनोमीटर के आसपास होता है इसमें इंटरलेयर एक्सपेंशन. ठीक है, मोंट मोरिलोनाइट में which is a dioctahedral geometry, and then we have vermiculite which is 1 to 1.5 nanometer. Then we have chloride which is 1.4 nanometer. Is it clear to everyone that what it is asking in the question and how you have to understand and then reply? And all other things like the layers of silicates have been mentioned here very nicely, which you should read about these mineral. Anyone having any doubt in this? Question number 39. Anyone having any doubt? Clear. चलिए आगे चलते हैं. We'll go ahead. Let's move to question number 40, which is also a very simple question, not a tough one. यहाँ पे भी मेंशन है प्राइमरी एल्यूमिनोसिलिकेट कौन कौन से हैं आपके, और यहाँ पे all the details have been given, but you should go through them well, right? यहाँ पे आपको शो भी किया है कि कैसे बनता है ऑक्टाहेड्रल लेयर्स का, कैसे टेट्राहेड्रल बनता है. ठीक है, जब 4 आपके लेंगे तो टेट्राहेड्रल होगी और 6 से आपकी ऑक्टाहेड्रल ज्योमेट्री बनती है, कोऑर्डिनेशन नंबर 6. यहाँ पे मेंशन भी किया है इंटरलेयर किस चीज का नाम है, बट that's all about that how much detail you are going into. From our side it have been like well in depth, well in detail, and in spite of solving them, in spite of knowing the right logic, you should read them well. They will help you out in the upcoming exam, whatever and whenever it will be, but it will surely going to help you in the upcoming exam which is coming. So question number 40, it talks about basically this is from air pollution side or climate change side. If you say the volatile organic compound which you called as VOCs, the volatile organic compound which you called as VOCs, so why they are of a great concern. So volatile organic compounds are of a great concern because, क्यों है ऐसा, why they are of great concern, ये हमें देखना पड़ेगा कि volatile organic compounds जो है हमारे वो काफी ज्यादा concern है हमारे लिए, क्यों, right? तो उसका लॉजिक हमें ढूंढना पड़ेगा कि क्यों है ऐसा. तो volatile organic compounds are of great concern because of the following reasons, right? Because of the following reasons, कि इसमें से हमें चूज करना है कि जो VOCs होते हैं, जैसे मैंने आपको बताया था व्हेन वी वर टीचिंग कि नेचुरल VOC भी होते हैं, जैसे आपके आइसोप्रीन, माइरिसिन, ऑसिमीन, राइट? And then we have anthropogenic VOCs such as benzene, toluene, ethylene, xylene. I'm just reconnecting what we have taught. On the basis of that, you can answer this question. So the second thing is that volatile organic compounds, VOCs, are of great concern because of which reasons? So we have to look into that. And let's see. Once such compounds are in the vapor state, they are difficult to control in the environment, right? They are difficult to control in the environment. ऐसा नहीं है, we can control them. It's not the case. Second, most of them, so this is not the right answer, right? This is wrong, right? Most of them are ozone depleting substance. It is not necessary that all the VOCs are ozone depleting substance, so this is also wrong. They contribute to general increase in relative hydrocarbon in the atmosphere. This is the absolutely correct answer, and they aid in the formation of secondary ozone, and they contribute to general increase in the reactive hydrocarbon in atmosphere, and it leads to secondary ozone production, which is the bad ozone. Bad ozone, right? So this is the major area of concern, why they are of concern, right? And they are less soluble in water. This is not the logic. Some of the VOCs are quite good soluble in water, right? So the correct logic here is that they contribute to a general increase in relative hydrocarbon in the atmosphere. This is the right logic and the point here. So we can choose this. They contribute to a general increase in reactive hydrocarbon in the atmosphere, right? So question number 43rd is the correct answer, that they contribute to a general increase in reactive hydrocarbon in the atmosphere. That's why the VOCs are of great concern. Is it clear to everyone? Anyone having any doubt? यहाँ पे सब कुछ मेंशन है काफी अच्छे से कि कहाँ से ये आते हैं, क्यों आते हैं. You can see from where they come. So indoor sources are there. This question have been asked multiple times. Paint, paint stripper, varnishes, like, ठीक है, adhesives, floor, carpet, presswood products, etc. Then we have activities such as tobacco smoke, dry cleaning, outdoor sources such as gasoline, etc. Right? But why they are of concern? Yeah. So this is the logic. VOCs are an important pollutant because of their contribution in the formation of ground level ozone, which I told you. Right? Major ये है जो threat है हमें. ठीक है कि जो ग्राउंड लेवल ओजोन है, सेकेंडरी ओजोन है, उसमें काफी हैवी कंट्रीब्यूट करते हैं. ठीक है. And ground level ozone can have many impacts on human health, key pollutant in the case of smog. Secondary pollutant basically वो है. Is it clear to everyone? कोई डाउट तो नहीं किसी को? क्वेश्चन नंबर 40 में जल्दी बताइए फटाफट. चलो आगे चलते हैं. Next question we are moving towards. Health impacts they have mentioned. Yeah. Question number 41, which is a very good question in fact. Question number 41. So it is basically a assertion reason question, right? It is basically a assertion reason question where it says that plants generally reflect radiations highly near IR region of the electromagnetic spectrum. This is absolutely true because you see that most of the part which they do not, it have been observed that they generally reflect the radiations near IR region. On the basis of that, these indexes have been developed, right? which you study for the health assessment, right? Like NDVI, etc. So plants generally reflect radiations highly in near IR region of electromagnetic spectrum. This is basically true. Okay. Second statement. So this statement is basically true. Second, plant leaves generally contain high chlorophyll content. This is also true. But if you go to assertion, this thing is not explaining why they reflect IR, right? So plant leaf having high chlorophyll content is not the logic behind why they reflect near IR. Okay. So it is their spectral property that it has been seen that the plant leaf is getting reflected near IR region, but it have nothing to do with the more amount or the less amount of the chlorophyll content. Okay. It is basically the spectral signature of the property of the matter, right? How it interact with the radiation. So both the statement are true, but not explaining the assertion. That's why second is the correct answer in this case. 2 would be the correct answer. Detailing थोड़ी सी हम देख लेते हैं इसकी, right? Both are true, but reason is not the correct explanation of assertion. Yeah. Okay, so you can see that it is near infrared and somewhat green they are reflecting. ठीक है, हम देख लेते हैं इसको. So different surface reflect electromagnetic waves such as visible light in different intensities. Black surfaces reflects less sunlight than white one. This is well known. But if you see, but there is more to that. Surface reflects some part of electromagnetic spectrum more intensely than other. For example, green vegetation absorb blue and red light quite intensely, whereas it reflects green and especially infrared light even more intensely. So these are the points which you have to keep in mind. Object differ in specific reflection and absorption characteristics, just like every human being has their individual fingerprint. As I mentioned, each object has its characteristic spectrum behavior. That's why the specific kind of behavior is called the spectral fingerprint. Take a look at the animation below in order to see what the spectral fingerprint of dry ground, water, and different plant vitalities look like. Can you how the surface differ in the reflection, blue, green, and red infrared. So this is basically spectral signature, nothing to do with that they have chlorophyll or not, right? Which is being mentioned. As you can see, healthy and green vegetation have very specific fingerprint. This is due to the spatial characteristics of the leaves. The leaves contain pigments such as chlorophyll, which absorbs the main part of the blue and red and impinging the light, but reflect the green range more intensively. That's why we precise leaves as a green. In the infrared range, which is invisible to human eye, the intensity of the reflection increases even further. This is due to the fact that infrared light is being reflected multiple times at the cell wall of the leaf cells due to the high reflectance of the infrared range. Healthy plants, right, stable cell wall stick out in the infrared band of satellite image. So the cell wall health is being depicted here, right? So that is the logic, along with the some credit goes to chlorophyll also, but not everything, right? So here they have mentioned about the NDVI also, as I mentioned to you guys, right? So structure and chemical setup, leaf reflect infrared light twice as intensely as green light. So it is all depend upon the chemical setup and the leaf reflectance, right? So I hope it is clear to everyone. Rest of the details you can refer. Then why the question goes to the answer too. So they have shown here that what is the basic reflectance, right? So they have mentioned very nicely that how it goes. IR ka zyada kyun hai, right? You can see here, right? So here you can see it is the quite a good band, 40% के आसपास आ रहा है. Anyone having any doubt in this question? Question number 41. We have given all the details there. You can go through that. Anyone having any doubt? Now let's come back to question number 42, which is basically coming, and this is also a repeated question. Let me tell you, it has been asked in 2019 also in a different form, and then again in September also they have repeated it. So let's talk about question number 42. And here they are talking about consider the following statement regarding the solubility of gases in water. So let me tell you guys that when you talk about the solubility of a gas in water, so that is inversely proportional to temperature. This you all of you know that lower the temperature, more the solubility, higher the temperature, lesser the solubility. So this is one of the logic where you should work it out, that solubility is directly dependent to this. The second thing is pH is one of the factor which play a crucial role when it comes to solubility of gases into water. And the third factor which takes place, the Henry's constant, KH, which is there. So these three major things, Henry's constant, that is also important. And it have a different value for different gases. So this is one of the thing which is there. Henry's constant is also there. So solubility of water is inversely. So now we can see that, and we have to choose the correct answer among the following. Then it is saying choose the correct answer from the options given below, right? So choose the correct answer from the options given below. So now let's see how it goes on. So let's see one by one. Question number 42. Okay. So we'll go the statement one by one. The concentration of dissolved gas in a water is proportional to its partial pressure. Absolutely true. We have studied this very well, that P is equal to P naught into chi, right? More the partial pressure, okay, more is the this, and total pressure is equal to partial pressure into mole fraction. So the concentration of dissolved gas in water is proportional to its partial pressure in the air. This is correct, absolutely correct. You might have studied these laws also, right? Relative lowering in vapor pressure, depression in freezing point, elevation in boiling point, and osmotic pressure. Basically, I'm talking about Raoult's law. You have studied that in solution in might be in class 12th, right? Then we have the solubility of gas in water remain unaffected, the other dissolved material in it increase. This is wrong. It get affected from the solute for sure. So this is wrong. Then solubility of a gas increase as temperature increase. This is absolutely wrong, because here the solubility is inversely proportional. If the temperature increase, solubility decrease. So this is also wrong. C is also wrong. Next, the solubility of gases in water is governed by Henry law. Absolutely true. We have already mentioned. So Henry law is basically governing the solubility of gases in water. So A and D is the correct answer, and A and D is only in one option, which is option number 4. So here we have only two statements which are correct, A and D, with respect to solubility of gases in water. And A and D have been mentioned only in one option, which is option number 4. Is it clear to everyone? Anyone having any doubt concept wise here? Because we have taught these things in environmental chemistry very well. Anyone having any doubt till here? We have offered two courses this time. One was taken by Tanya, another was taken by me. So all this have been covered there. Okay, done. Now let's move to the next question. You can see here it have been shown very well that how it varies with temperature, but this is a basic concept and you can see the detailings of all of them. Yeah, so the next question is directly coming from ecology. The next question is directly coming from ecology. Question number 43. And before I go here, I'll go to the detail, and this is also a repeated question. The table have been given twice or three times. We have two type of selection, K selection and R selection theory. So you can compare here the characteristics of both of them. So this is the basically the crux of the story. Like we have R selective species and K selective species, right? And we can compare them. And generally, if you see, The species which are there in the early phase of succession, they are generally R selective, and K selective species are generally into the later phase of succession. Like if you talk about the climax community, they are majorly supporting the K selective speciation. We have talked about this very well in succession also, and it have been multiple times told to you guys while teaching the succession, right? So जो आपके अर्ली स्टेज वाले होते हैं वो आर सेलेक्टिव होते हैं सक्सेशन में, पाइनियर जिनको आप बोलते हैं, और जो क्लाइमेक्स कम्युनिटी का पार्ट होते हैं वो जनरली के सेलेक्टिव होते हैं. तो क्या क्या फीचर में डिफरेंसेस है वो हम देख लेते हैं. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल इफ यू टॉक अबाउट नंबर ऑफ ऑफस्प्रिंग, सो आर वाले में हाई होंगे, ठीक है, के वाले में लो होंगे, क्योंकि क्लाइमेक्स स्टेज में पेरेंटल केयर जनरली लो होती है आर वाले में, के वाले में हाई होती है. रिप्रोडक्टिव मेच्योरिटी अर्ली में ज्यादा होती है, इसमें लेट होती है. Size of offspring small and large in K. Independent at birth early, R में early होती है, इसमें late होती है. Ability to learn low and high, right? Life span जो है आपका short होता है R में और long होता है K में. Early mortality R में high होती है और K में low होती है. So these are some of the characteristics, and on the basis of these characteristics only they have asked this question, right? If you see, they have asked this question on the basis of this only. So the question says that question number 43, it says that a strategy the question says that a strategy favored by R selection is. So R selection में आपकी कौन सी strategy favor होती है? It is asking like this, right? So R selection की बात हो रही है, इसका मतलब अर्ली स्पीशीज की बात हो रही है, पाइनियर स्पीशीज की बात हो रही है, उसको ध्यान से देखना है. कहता है जी हाई प्रोपोर्शनल एलोकेशन टू नॉन रिप्रोडक्टिव एक्टिविटीज. दिस इज रॉन्ग. Living in environment imposing high density to independent mortality. This is also wrong. Living in environment imposing a high density dependent regulation. This is also wrong, as we have seen the differences between both of them. We can easily pick up. Fourth point, higher proportional allocation to reproductive activities, because यहाँ पे आपको पता है reproduction high है, ठीक है, more young ones हैं, more dispersals हैं. So that's why fourth is the correct answer. A strategy favored by our selection is high proportional allocation to reproductive activity. That's why the rate is higher and the number of individuals are also higher. So fourth would be the correct answer, because the strategy which is favored by our selection is the fourth one. Anyone having any doubt? Higher proportional allocation to the reproductive activity is the characteristics which is favored by our selection strategy. Anyone having any doubt in 43? जल्दी बताओ भैया. Quick. Anyone having any doubt? Clear है, कोई डाउट तो नहीं किसी को इसमें? चलो आगे आ जाओ. Okay, now let's talk about question number 44, which is a very simple question and repeated question. Multiple times it have been asked in the NTA. So all of you know, whenever we have a landfill and we have anaerobic digestion, or if you see different stages of the landfill of anaerobic digestion, you find out different gases. So let me show you if I have the curve. Yeah, absolutely. So we have these stages, like early we have carbohydrate, protein and lipid in the waste. Then hydrolysis of them leads to sugar, amino acid, long chain fatty acid. Further, volatile fatty acid, propionate and butyrate by acidogenesis process, which is the second step. Then we have acetogenesis, where we have acetic acid formation, as well as we have formation for H2 and CO2. Then methanogenesis process in the last step, where we get methane and CO2. So these are the gases which have been there in the case of anaerobic digestion of municipal solid waste. Now let's move to the question which says that, the question number 44 says that, which of the following are the dominant product of anaerobic digestion of municipal solid waste? So which are the dominant product? You have seen it is CO2 and methane. It is CO2 and methane. Majority में कौन है? CO2 है और methane है, right? Majority में जो है आपका CO2 और methane है, right? Like it have been seen that 70% of the biomass converted into methane, right? That is the one thing. Yeah. So CO2 and methane, like here they have mentioned. You can see here. If you go by this data, you have methane. Where landfill site, you can see 45 to 58. And then we have CO2, you can see here 32 to 45. So majority of the gases, which two gases I've shown you with the process also, right? Yeah. So with the process also, we can see here that the majority of the gases which are there is basically CO2 and methane. So that's why second is the correct answer, methane and CO2. Is it clear to everyone? Question number 44. किसी को कोई डाउट है यहाँ पे? जल्दी बताइए फटाफट, क्विक एंड फास्ट, जल्दी से. Anyone having any doubt till here? Clear? चलिए जी आगे आ जाइए. Okay, we will keep it till here, right? In the next series,